And now, a story from the Appleseed.
I'm going away to leave you, love. I'm going away for a while. But I'll return to you someday if I go 10,000 miles. The storms are on the ocean. The heavens will cease to be. This world will lose its motion, love, if I prove false to thee. Well, who will shoe your pretty little foot? And who will glove your hand? And who will be your own true love while I'm in a foreign land? The storms are on the ocean. The heavens will cease to be. This world will lose its motion, love, if I prove false to thee. Long ago, there was a merchant, a man who sailed on the seas. And he married a woman who was a musician. And the neighbors, they remembered the day they moved the piano. They saw it lying on its side, being pulled on a cart with horses, and watched that wooden shape rock like a boat all the way down the road. And the merchant and his wife settled down into a life on the land for a time being. And in time, she gave birth to a young girl. And after several years, he went back to sea for these irregular times and then home for a bit. Well, who will shoe your pretty little foot? And who will glove your hand? Well, the mama and the young girl, they grew so close in their work and play. And the mama had songs for everything. Maybe it happened to you. Whether the weather is cold, whether the weather is hot, we'll be together whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. The mama and this young girl, they just loved each other. They were like two peas in a pod. One day, the mama was chopping onions and cutting them slender and turned to her daughter, who was 2, in this very delicate balance, looking up. And she said, when you cut the onions, they're for soup, so not too skinny, not too wide. And her daughter looking up, yeah. And then they went out and weeding in the garden, and her mama taking up some basil, and her daughter knew to, with those puffy hands, picking and smashing the leaf and smelling it, and her daughter saying, bee, it's a bee, it's a bee. Her mother placed the young girl between her body and the basin where they did the dishes, and the girl was on a stool, this young child, and she just patted the water with her hands. She just loved playing in the water. Years later, when she was grown up, she would tell her friends, I never minded doing the dishes. I think it's because my mother allowed me to play in the water. It's always such good fun. They had such a lovely life. and her husband coming home every now and then. And one night they were looking up the stars, and her mother began to sing, by and by and by, stars, number one, number two, number three, good Lord, by and by, good Lord, by and by. They had such a good life in that place. And when the girl was 12, one night the mother and the papa stepped in to say goodnight, and then everybody tucked in and went to sleep. And deep in the night, the mother took her last breath. And her daughter came to find her, and she went to wake her up. She said, Mama, let's go, Mama. And she couldn't wake her. And she ran to get her father. Papa, come. She said, is she going to sleep 100 years? They couldn't wake her. And their mama had slipped right out of this world on a breath. They were lost. And the house so quiet until the girls started to bring up those songs again, and found that when she was making her work, doing her work, she was right there with her mother in spirit. It took a couple years before the father one day woke up, and he took a long bath, and then he put on a crisp shirt, polished his shoes, and he went into town thinking, I need to find a new mother for my daughter. She is young, and I am missing a companion. And it wasn't long before he met a widow with 2 older daughters, and he thought, oh, she'll have sisters. How lovely. And they married. And the first time Nancy, our heroine, saw those girls come, it was first in the very wealthy carriage that came down that dusty road. And then she just saw their hats from the window looking down. The man with the horses, he untied them and took them round to get water. And the girls, they pulled this enormous trunk out of the carriage and then banged it up the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. And they got upstairs and Nancy said, hello. And they just walked right past her, right into her bedroom and said, this will be our room. This will be good. This will be good for 2 people. And Nancy said, but this is my room. And they said, you could go upstairs. You could go upstairs. And she was thinking, how do they know we have an upstairs? They just got here. But she went in and she got some of her things out of the drawers and blankets and her pillow and book or 2. And then she went up the stairs and pushed open that attic door and thought, ooh, it's a good thing I know how to clean. It was very dusty up there. And she made her new place there. And they all settled down. And it was not long before the new mother recognized that this young woman who of the house knew how to work and clean and make and sew and mend, and she was completely self-supporting. She did not need any help to do anything. And then she started looking at her own daughters and started noticing how very unkind they were to this sister, their new sister. And she thought she never had noticed her daughters being so unkind and mean in their sound and tone. And it was really quite strange to really see that in her own daughters. One day, Nancy was putting away the ashes in the fireplace, and she looked up the chimney and she saw the stars out, and she started singing, by and by. By and by, stars shining, number one, number two, number three. And the girls came out of their bedroom and sat at the top of the stairs just so they could listen. And they pulled their nighties over their knees and they just rested. And that's when the one said to the other, I call her Cinderbottom. What do you call her? Well, the younger sister, Cinderbottom, she's always sitting in those ashes at night. And the younger girl, she really loved that sister, but she couldn't show it to her older sister. So she said, I'm going to call her Cinderella. I will call her Cinderella. Well, one day there came to the door a loud knock, and Cinderella and Nancy answered the door, and there was a messenger from the prince who was having a ball, and he had an invitation, and he said, this is for the ladies of the house. And she said, and let's see, and he handed her, and there were 2 names on the envelope, and she started to say, but there's 3 of us. And then she looked down at her work boots that were muddy and her clothes. And she said, I will give them to the ladies of the house. And he said, thank you very much. On my way. And he stepped back and bowed and off he went. And she took the letter upstairs and showed it to her sisters. And oh, there was such big excitement. There was something finally to get ready for. And in those days, you couldn't just go down and get a dress somewhere. You had to work with what you had. And so for the next weeks, they were undoing and taking out seams and adding lace and ribbon. And they fashioned these beautiful dresses that Nancy helped them tidy up. The one daughter had immediately lowered the bodice, and then she had to really fix that up very tidily. And on the day of the ball, the young girls and their mother, they set off in a carriage pulled by horses. And Nancy went outside the house and into the garden, and she just started to weep. I miss my mama. Mama, I miss my mama. And then suddenly she smelled white shoulders. A very old perfume, she remembered, white shoulders, and here came Marie, her godmother. Marie stepped out of the shadows and said, Nancy, do you want to go to the ball? And Nancy said, of course I want to go. And her godmother said, and what colored dress would you like? And Nancy said, I would like it sky blue, please. And Marie touched her shoulder, and zingo, zango, she was in a ball gown. Instant. I don't know where that came from, ladies and gentlemen. It didn't come from a closet. And then she said, how would you like your hair? And she said, up. and she said, and Marie, can you change my shoes? And Marie said, oh, no, you just take those off. I've got something for you. And she reached into a bag around her shoulder and she pulled out glass slippers. And she said, these will go with everything. Slip them on. And she slipped her feet in, and that glass was cool to her toes. She said, thank you so much. She said, how will I get there? Marie said, well, do you have a pumpkin? Do you have a pumpkin? She said, what, we're going to cook now? She said, no, just a pumpkin. And she said, I've got one growing in the yard. She brought it back big and round. Marie touched it, and here was the most beautiful carriage. And Nancy looked inside. You could see pumpkin seeds around the top, very shiny and golden, lovely. She pulled her head out of the carriage, and Marie said, do you have any mice? We're going to need some horses. So Nancy said, I have friendly traps. They've got peanut butter on their feet. I'll be right back. And she went in the kitchen and came back and brought these 4 little mice. There was peanut butter on their feet. She goes, they just lick it off and then they can go run around again. She goes, that'll be fine. And Marie touched them with her fingers, and zingo zango, there were 4 horses. And now Nancy was catching on. She says, I have lizards. I have lizards for the men, for the coachmen. And she ran into the house and came back with 2 blue-bellied lizards. And they were now in vests of velvet, men with long, narrow noses like a lizard, and a white, creamy white shirt under that blue vest. She made her way to the palace, and as soon as arrived, the butler was there, and he saw this young woman arriving by herself. He called the prince, and the prince came, and he stood on the stairs and watched this young, elegant woman simply get out of a carriage. And he extended his arm. He took her inside, and they were waltzing. There was music. There was music. So it filled Nancy's heart. And then there was a small feast with lemon and oranges in bowls of delicacy in those times. Later, when they were out on the veranda, she was remembering Marie's instruction that she had to be home before midnight because things were going to change. And when the clock started to strike, she asked for a lemonade from the prince, and he quickly turned to go, and she immediately pulled up her skirts and started down the stairs, ran right out of one of those glass slippers and kept going. And when the prince came back with lemonade, she wasn't anywhere. And he looked and he saw the shoe on the stairs. And he took the lemonade and he went out to the guard's gate and he asked him, he said, have you seen a young woman leaving the party? And they said, no, but it looked like a kitchen maid was leaving because a woman was leaving with a large pumpkin in her arms. Well, he went back to the party, and she made her way home. The mice and the lizards stayed there because they watered more frequently. It was very cool and refreshing in that garden. But she went straight home, and she got in bed. And when her friends, her sisters arrived, she kept her hands under the covers because she didn't know if they would smell the orange and lemon on her fingertips from the party. And they came in and she said, how was it? And they said, she said, did you dance with the prince? They said, we did. He danced with everyone, but not after that other lady arrived in the blue dress. But we had a very nice time. And Mama did too. And they all tucked in. And the next morning, it wasn't long before someone knocked on the door. And Cinderella was out in the garden, and she noticed a man bringing horses round to get water, as they often did when they stopped. And he said, you're a lady of the house? She said, I am. And he said, well, you best go in. Everybody has to try on the shoe. She said, the shoe? Yes, everyone has to try on the shoe. So she went in. And her sister saw her, and they were trying on the shoe. It didn't fit at all. And she said, I'll try it on. And they said, you can't try it on. You weren't even there. And she goes, it's a game. Everyone's trying it on. And she put her foot in, and it fit. And then she hobbled over to the fireplace and pulled the other glass slipper out from the logs of wood by the fireplace, and she put them on. And just then Marie showed up, and Marie said, and what would you like to wear to the prince's house? And she said, I would like a traveling suit, please. Pastel colors, and I'll keep the shoes. She said, of course, the shoes go with everything. And so she made her way to the palace, and she did marry the prince. And I want you to know, she kept an eye for a couple of dukes that worked at the palace for her sisters, because she knew that all they needed was a relationship, just someone they could learn to love and care for. And from that place, there is an old sentence that goes like this: beauty is a gift, kindness is a choice, and may we all live and thrive and love as long as we know that.
Thanks for joining us for a story from the Appleseed.